In this lifetime, there comes a moment, silent, sudden, and often uninvited, when something inside begins to stir. A quiet discomfort, a question, a subtle shift that whispers, "Is this all there is?" This is not just a passing thought, it is a crack in the armor of ordinary life. And through that crack, something ancient begins to shine. This is the beginning of a spiritual awakening. But contrary to what many people think, awakening is not a beautiful, peaceful unfolding. Not at first. It is not about incense, crystals, or floating above your problems. It is a death, a dying of all that is false. It is a collapse of all the stories you've built around who you are, the roles you've played, the masks you've worn, the dreams you were told to chase. One by one, they fall apart. And in the rubble, you are asked to stand naked, with no map, no guarantee, no reward, just the truth staring back at you. Most people are not prepared for this, because the truth is, awakening is a destructive process. It doesn't improve your life immediately, it dismantles it. It doesn't elevate your ego, it challenges and dissolves it. The illusions you held tightly about success, about love, about self-worth are stripped away. What remains is raw, unfamiliar, and terrifying. That is why so many turn back. They survive the beginning, but not the middle. They open the door, but refuse to walk through. In today's world, where comfort is worshipped and distraction is always within reach, the inner journey becomes an act of rebellion. It requires stillness in a world of noise, depth in a world obsessed with surface, sincerity in a world trained to perform. And that is why awakening, though available to all, is embraced by only a few. Most people don't survive, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught how to suffer consciously. They were never shown how to let go without falling apart. They confuse the pain of transformation with the pain of failure, and so they retreat. But if you are here, listening to these words, it means a seed is already growing inside you. The process has begun. And with guidance, with clarity, with courage, you can survive. More than that, you can be transformed. In the next moments, I will walk with you through 5 deep stages of awakening. Each stage is a challenge. Each one reveals why people get stuck, give up, or go back to sleep. But if you understand the terrain, if you learn to breathe through the chaos, you will not only survive your awakening, you will emerge from it reborn. Let us begin. Many people think spiritual awakening is about finding peace, happiness, or light. But the truth is, the first step of awakening is destruction. It is the collapse of all the beliefs you've held onto for years. When the structure of comfort begins to fall, fear arises, because what we consider normal is simply repetition. And awakening threatens this cycle. That's why most people retreat back into their comfort zones before the transformation can even begin. The illusion of comfort is like a warm bed in a cold room. It is safe, yes, but it is also limiting. We believe we are fine as we are, unaware that comfort has become our cage. True awakening strips this illusion away. You begin to see that everything you relied on, your name, your status, your desires, is impermanent. And when people realize this, they panic, because they have mistaken these external things for their identity. A true spiritual path is not about collecting knowledge, but about releasing attachments, releasing identities, releasing the idea that life is meant to be always pleasant. But most are not prepared for this release. They expect light but are confronted by darkness. They expect answers, but they receive silence. It is in this moment many turn away, not because awakening failed, but because they didn't understand the process. The illusion convinces people that staying asleep is easier. It tells them, you don't need to change, you are fine just as you are. But awakening demands that everything which is not truly you must burn away. And not everyone is ready to see their ego dissolve. Not everyone is willing to let go of the lies that once gave them security. That is why the path is narrow, not because truth is rare, but because the willingness to face it is. Spiritual awakening is not a journey outward, it is a turning inward. It is the moment when you stop blaming the world and start questioning yourself. But this mirror does not flatter. It shows you not only your beauty, but also your wounds, your fears, your shadows. Most people run from this reflection. They prefer to polish their image rather than clean their soul. When the mirror of inner truth appears, it becomes clear that everything outside is just a projection. The conflicts, the judgments, the frustrations, they are all signposts pointing to something unresolved within. And this is not an easy truth to accept, because it is far simpler to point fingers than to sit in silence and observe your own patterns. Shi Heng Yi often reminds us, self-mastery begins with self-honesty, but honesty is painful. It requires you to admit that you have been part of your own suffering, that you have contributed to your own confusion, and most importantly, that the only way out is not escape, but integration. Most people fail to survive their awakening because they fight against this mirror rather than learning from it. True growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. The mirror of the inner world does not show perfection, it shows potential. But to reach it, you must walk through discomfort. And only those who are willing to face their own inner storms will discover the peace that lies beyond. One of the greatest challenges of awakening is the death of the false self, the ego. This identity we've carefully constructed over the years begins to crumble, and this is terrifying, because even though it is false, it is familiar. And the human mind clings to what it knows, even if it suffers. The false self survives through roles: parent, worker, achiever, victim. These are not your essence, they are masks. But we've worn them so long that removing them feels like tearing off our skin. This is why awakening feels like dying, because in a way, something is dying. The illusion of who we thought we were. Letting go does not mean erasing your personality. It means no longer letting your personality define your truth. But for many, the silence after the ego fades is too loud. They feel lost, empty, undefined. This emptiness is sacred, but misunderstood. In that emptiness, the true self begins to emerge. But you must stay with it, wait in the silence, breathe into the void. The ego resists this process. It will distract, tempt, argue. It will tell you, go back to who you were doing fine. But fine is not freedom, and if you want to be free, you must let the ego die with dignity. You must choose authenticity over approval, stillness over noise, presence over persona. This is the path, and few are willing to walk it to the end. Spiritual awakening demands detachment, not because life is to be rejected, but because clinging blinds us. We attach ourselves to people, possessions, ideas, and even suffering. But awakening shows us that all things change, and what changes cannot be the foundation of our peace. Letting go hurts, not because we lose, but because we identify with what we're losing. Most people cannot endure this pain. They try to hold on to everything, even as life forces them to let go. They call this process unfair. But nature teaches us, and seasons change, leaves fall, storms come and go. In the same way, relationships shift, desires fade, identities dissolve. The pain is not in the change itself. It is in the resistance to change. When you begin to detach, the ego panics. It feels like you're giving up. But in truth, you're growing up. You stop reacting and start observing. You stop chasing and start aligning. But this space of detachment feels cold to those who've mistaken attachment for love. They confuse control with connection. That confusion leads to suffering, not awakening. Detachment is not apathy, it is clarity. It is the understanding that you can love fully without needing to possess. You can serve without expecting reward. You can exist without defining yourself by what you own. But to reach this clarity, you must pass through the fire of detachment, and this fire will burn away everything false, including the parts of you that are not truly you. Spiritual awakening is a solitary journey, not because no one cares, but because few understand. The moment you begin to wake up, you realize that your priorities no longer match the world's. You no longer find meaning in the same conversations, the same distractions, the same noise. And slowly people begin to fall away. This loneliness is one of the greatest trials. The silence becomes heavier. The laughter that once lifted you now feels distant. The sense of belonging dissolves. And in this space, many return to the crowd. Not because the crowd is right, but because being alone feels unbearable. But if you endure the silence, something beautiful happens. In solitude, you meet yourself. Not the roles, not the titles, just the raw presence of your being. It is in this space that depth grows. Wisdom emerges, peace takes root, and you begin to realize being alone does not mean being empty, it means being whole. But you must trust the silence long enough to hear the truth within it. Shi Heng Yi once said, "Silence is a master, but only to the student who listens." Most never survive their awakening because they confuse loneliness with loss. They don't see that solitude is the doorway to self-realization. Walk through it, sit in it, grow inside of it. And eventually the loneliness becomes your strength, not your suffering. When the soul begins to wake up, a war begins, not outside but inside. The old habits fight the new awareness. The conditioned mind resists the awakened consciousness. And this internal tension is more exhausting than any battle in the external world. It drains you, confuses you, tests you. Every single day, You will feel pulled in two directions. One part wants to evolve, the other wants to remain the same. This is natural, because for years your mind has been programmed by fear, society, trauma. And now your spirit is rising, and the mind feels threatened. This conflict is not failure. It is purification. The fire is not there to destroy you. It is there to reveal you. But most people don't understand this. They feel the war and assume something is wrong. They say, I feel worse, not better. That's because the awakening doesn't bring peace first. It brings awareness. And awareness shows you everything. Your patterns, your pain, your pretenses. The peace comes after you've made peace with all of it. To survive this war within, you must practice discipline. Breathwork, stillness, movement, nature, service, these are your tools. They ground you when the storm comes. Because the storm will come, not once, but many times. But each time you face it with presence, a part of your false self falls away. And in its place, your essence grows stronger. Many people believe suffering is a punishment. They think if they suffer, they must be doing something wrong. But suffering is not a sign of failure. It is often the sign of growth. Like a muscle that breaks before it strengthens, the soul expands through the tension of pain. Yet without the right view, people see only the pain and miss the lesson. Suffering appears during awakening because what was once unconscious becomes conscious. You begin to feel everything. Old emotions, buried memories, forgotten wounds, they all rise. And when people are not ready to face them, they blame the path. They say awakening made things worse. But no, it only made them visible. It revealed what was already there, hiding beneath distraction. You must remember, pain is a teacher, but only if you stop running from it. Instead of asking, why me? Ask, what is this showing me? This question transforms your suffering into insight. You begin to notice that your reactions are rooted in conditioning. You begin to trace your patterns back to their origins. And slowly the pain becomes wisdom. Shi Heng Yi often speaks of conscious suffering, the practice of observing pain without being consumed by it. This takes strength, patience, a steady breath, but it is worth it, because on the other side of suffering is a self that cannot be shaken, a self that understands, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become after it. The awakened path leads you into the unknown, a space where nothing is guaranteed and certainty no longer exists. And for most people, this is too much. They want answers, they want control. But the unknown demands surrender. It asks you to walk, not because you know what's ahead, but because you trust the ground beneath your feet. This surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the ability to move forward with open hands and a quiet mind. But again, few are willing. They want the light to guide every step, forgetting that sometimes the path only becomes clear after you've walked it. The unknown is the test of faith, and not faith in something outside, but faith in your own alignment with truth. Awakening strips away all false certainties. It shows you that much of what you believed was never yours. It was inherited, imposed, or imagined. So now you must learn to navigate without a map, to sit with questions, to make peace with mystery. This is not easy, but it is necessary, because only in the unknown can something truly new be born. You will face doubt, you will want to go back. But if you can remain still in the unknown, you will discover something priceless. Freedom. Not the freedom to control everything, but the freedom from needing to. And this is the mark of the one who survives awakening. They don't just face the unknown, they become it. Spacious, silent, open. Discipline is the bridge between knowledge and embodiment. Many people begin awakening with insight. They read, reflect, meditate, but they lack the daily structure to sustain it. And without discipline, insight fades. Old habits return. The ego regains its throne. That is why spiritual awakening is not a moment. It is a lifelong training. Discipline is misunderstood. People think it is restrictive. But discipline is the path to freedom. It creates space between impulse and action. It allows you to respond instead of react. It strengthens your awareness like a blade, sharp and clear. Without it, the noise of the world pulls you back into sleep, back into distraction, back into forgetfulness. A disciplined mind is like still water. It reflects truth. Shi Heng Yi teaches this through movement, breath, silence, through repetition, through showing up even when motivation is gone, because motivation is temporary. Discipline is rooted in purpose, and when your purpose is awakening, you cannot rely on mood. You must rely on practice. Wake early, breathe deeply, move mindfully, speak less, observe more. These small disciplines build a foundation strong enough to survive the storms of awakening, because the storms will come. But if your roots are deep, you do not break, you bend. And each time you return to your practice, you remember, this is the path, not easy, but worthy. At the end of the spiritual journey, we don't become something new, we return to what we've always been. Presence, pure awareness, before name, before thought, before fear. And this is the great paradox. We travel so far only to arrive exactly where we started. But now we see with new eyes. Now we walk with quiet strength. Presence is not a concept. It is not something you understand. It is something you live. It is the breath right now, the movement of your body, the stillness of the trees, the silence behind all sound. Most people never reach this state, not because it is far, but because it is simple. And the mind loves complexity. The ego loves to chase. But presence asks for nothing. It is always here, waiting, watching. Most miss it because they are searching for awakening, searching for enlightenment. But presence does not need to be found. It needs to be remembered. And remembering requires stillness, patience, attention. Those who survive the spiritual awakening do not come out as saints or sages. They come out aware of their mind, aware of their breath, aware of this moment. And in that awareness, they find peace. Not because the world changed, but because they did. This is the power of presence, and this is the final gift of awakening.